They say the galaxy's most terrifying sound isn't a doomsday cannon charging or a black hole swallowing a sun. It's silence. The kind that arrives after a fleet drops out of FTL and all your sensors swear they can't identify who they are, where they're from, or how in the 9 frozen moons they got here without being noticed. That was the sound in the council chamber when the screens lit up with a formation of ships, their hulls unregistered, their drives anomalous, their weapons. Well, the less said the better. Unidentified fleet detected, the sensor officer whispered, voice cracking. Origin unknown. Except then the word came across the comms. A word that made every alien delegate blink, choke, and, depending on their anatomy, either shed spines, molt feathers, or quietly attempt to crawl under the conference table. Human. And, according to the ship's signatures, very much ready for war. Ambassador Callan, the first human ever allowed into the Galactic Council as an observer, leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs with leisurely elegance, and smiled like a polite waiter about to recommend a special. He was young, looking for a species everyone assumed wouldn't survive beyond its home gravity well. Clean uniform, silver cufflinks, dark eyes sparkling with amusement. "Ah," he said softly, as though someone had just overfilled his teacup. "Looks like my ride's here." The Chlorith speaker, a 12-limbed crustacean creature who had spent 3 centuries bullying younger civilizations, clicked his mandibles. "Your ride?" Callan nodded. "Yes. Fleet 7, if I'm not mistaken. Punctual as always." "You must admire punctuality." The speaker's mandibles ground. "Human. You said Earth's forces were primitive. Single system bound. Barely out of their cradle." Callan gave an apologetic shrug. "I do apologize if I misled you. Technically, we were past tense. You know how babies are. Take a nap 1 week, start walking the next, steal the neighbor's car the week after. Growing pains. Laughter. Not the hearty kind. The nervous, high-pitched kind that echoes around an assembly where no one wants to admit they don't get the joke." The Varen delegate, a tall avian with feathers that changed color depending on mood, currently a very unflattering puce, leaned forward. "How many ships are we seeing?" The answer came from the chamber AI. 1,247 vessels. Fully armed. Composition. Unknown. Energy readings. Unprecedented. 1,000 ships. Enough to conquer a quadrant. Enough to topple empires. The silence that followed could have powered a reactor. Ambassador Callan sipped the tea the council had provided, made a small face, and set it down. "You know," he said mildly, "we really must introduce you to proper tea one of these days. Boiling leaves isn't quite the art form you've made it out to be." The understatement was not lost on anyone. The galaxy had, until that moment, considered humans an amusing footnote. Odd creatures from a wet little world, always smiling, shaking hands, a bizarre custom involving direct contact of appendages, and telling self-deprecating jokes. Useful, perhaps, for manual labor or curiosity studies. Nothing more. And yet here was an armada that had appeared without warning, in perfect formation, radiating enough firepower to make the ancient warlords of the Orion Arm sweat in their sleep. The Ashar, reptilian strategists who prided themselves on anticipating every threat, hissed in disbelief. "Impossible. No species advances this fast without assistance." "Which empire is backing you? Who gave you this fleet?" Callan's smile broadened. "Oh, nobody gave us anything. We're very DIY as a species. Bit of duct tape here, repurposed asteroid there. You'd be amazed what you can build once you've tried killing each other with it for a few centuries. Practice makes perfect." That line landed like a bomb. The council chamber erupted, outrage, denial, frantic whispers. The Chlorith speaker slammed a clawed limb onto the table. "This is a provocation. Humans have violated council law. This fleet is an act of war." Callan raised a hand politely, like a schoolboy waiting to be called on. "With respect, sir, We've never actually signed your laws, have we? So technically, no violation. Just a surprise visit. The restraint in his tone made it worse. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't threatening. He was being reasonable, which meant somewhere in the cold machinery of human planning, war had already been reduced to a polite line item. Outside the chamber, the fleet shifted. The ships weren't like anything seen before, angular, brutal, painted black with faint starlit etchings. They radiated silence, the kind that said they didn't need to advertise their presence. Predators didn't roar when stalking prey. A dozen council navies scrambled their forces. Across the galaxy, commands went out. Mobilize, prepare defenses, call reserves. The humans hadn't fired a shot, and already whole empires were trembling. The irony? Callan looked almost embarrassed by all the fuss. You're overthinking this, he said gently. Really, we only came to talk. The Varin delegate screeched. With 1,000 warships? Well, Callan said, tilting his head as though explaining arithmetic to a child, you'd hardly have listened if we just sent flowers. The first shots weren't fired by humans. They were fired at them. A panicked Chlorith defense fleet, stationed nearby, opened fire without orders. Beams lanced into the dark void, impacting against the nearest human battleship. For 3 glorious seconds, the chamber thought the humans would be obliterated. Then the beams vanished into nothing. Absorbed. Like water into sand. The human ship didn't so much as twitch. A single voice crackled back over the open comms, calm and polite. Kindly refrain from doing that again. Thank you. Half the chamber nearly fainted. The council's tone shifted rapidly from outrage to bargaining. Please. Questions. Demands. Callan listened patiently, hands folded, every inch the courteous guest. But every so often his eyes flicked to the display of his fleet, and those eyes had the unnerving glint of someone who knew exactly how this would end. You want to know why we're here, he said at last. It's simple. We've been watching, listening, learning, and we've noticed something rather troubling. The chamber held its breath. You all keep referring to humans as young, primitive, harmless. We let you. We even encouraged it. Easier that way. But the truth is, he leaned forward, voice dropping into a conspiratorial murmur that carried to every corner of the hall. You never noticed the teeth behind the smile. On cue, the fleet shifted again. Hundreds of ships aligning like wolves encircling prey. Not firing. Not yet. Just showing. The avian delegate's feathers turned corpse white. This is blackmail. Callan spread his hands. No, no. Not blackmail. Just honesty. Something new for the council, I believe. Humor laced his words, but underneath was iron. The kind of iron that came from a species who had looked into the abyss of nuclear war and said, we can work with this. The Ishar strategist finally growled, What do you want? Callan smiled thinly. That's the right question. He stood, straightened his uniform, and spoke clearly enough to make history books catch fire. We want a seat at the table. A real one. Equal voice. Equal power. Because we're here to stay. And if you won't grant it. He gestured lightly at the display of warships. Well, we'll just rearrange the seating ourselves. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Accusations, threats, desperate calculations of how many ships each empire could muster. But deep down they all knew. Humanity hadn't come asking. Humanity had come prepared. Polite. Smiling. Ready for war. And then came the twist. Callan tapped his wrist device. The fleet on the screen split apart. Not into attack formations, but into dispersal vectors. One by one, squadrons peeled off, vanishing into FTL toward coordinates across the galaxy. What are they doing? The speaker demanded. Callan's eyes gleamed. Oh, didn't I mention? This isn't an invasion fleet. It's a deployment. The chamber froze. Each squadron is headed to one of your border systems, Callan said pleasantly. Not to conquer. Not to destroy. Simply to wait. Patiently. Until such a time as we need them. The implication hit like a hammer. Humanity had just seeded the galaxy with hidden fleets. Silent wolves at every border. A trap laid not for one empire, but all of them. The Chlorith speaker slammed his claws down again, but this time they trembled. This is tyranny. Callan inclined his head. No. Tyranny is messy. Inefficient. Wasteful. This is insurance. And humans do love insurance. That was the breaking point. The Chamber, proud rulers of 1,000 worlds, realized with dawning horror that they weren't negotiating with an upstart species. They were negotiating with predators who had already set the board, moved the pieces, and checkmated the galaxy before anyone noticed the game had begun. Callan gave a final polite bow. Thank you for your time. I'll see myself out. And with that, the human fleet vanished into the dark, leaving behind silence. The deadliest sound in the galaxy.